Hello and welcome in to another episode of Friar Territory here on the Foul Territory Network. I'm your host, Kyle Glazer. We've got a very special show for you today. We're kicking off a series where we break down all of the Padres NL West rivals: Padres, Dodgers, Diamondbacks, Giants. These are the teams the Padres will be facing the most throughout the 2025 season. And it's important to understand what's going on, where these teams have their strengths and weaknesses, and ultimately how the Padres match up against them. To kick off our series, we are pleased to be joined by Bill Plunkett of the Orange County Register and Southern California News Group. Bill's the longtime beat writer for the Los Angeles Dodgers, as well as the author of a new book, LA Story, which chronicles the Dodgers' 2024 postseason run and World Series championship, including beating the Padres in the NLDS. Dodgers obviously had a tremendous postseason, a tremendous postseason, winning the World Series, their first full season World Series since 1988, which included beating the Padres in the NLDS 3-2. They followed that up with a very, very, very headline-grabbing offseason, signing Blake Snell, signing Roki Sasaki, bringing back Clayton Kershaw, Teoscar Hernandez, Kike Hernandez, Blake Trinan, adding Michael Conforto, adding Kirby Yates, adding Hae-Sung Kim. The Dodgers took what was already the best team in baseball and added even more to it. Certainly going to be a challenge for the Padres in 2025, but that's why they play the games. There's obviously no love lost between these two teams. And it's good to have Bill join us to break down everything we need to know about the Dodgers and ultimately what the outlook is for this season, the key things to watch, and where the Padres might be able to take advantage. Again, it'll be a challenge to them and everyone else, but that's why they play the games. We're going to hear a quick word from our sponsors, and then we'll be joined by Bill Plunkett.
FT fam, if you love ripping packs of cards, there is a modern way to do that now on Arena Club with their slab packs and crats. I know you love ripping slab packs and getting that sweet card that you've always been looking for.
Yeah, and you don't have to go through all the other ones, all the Kratz cards that are in there. Bang, you just get the big one, the one that you're just peeking right around the corner when you open that pack, the one you expect to get.
Also, Arena Club will make you an instant offer for your card based on its market value. You'll get an instant offer of 90% of the estimated value, so you can accept it on the spot, simple, fast, and risk-free. Use that cash to buy more slab packs, and you can get your cards officially graded by Arena Club. So go check it out right now, FT fam. You can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/foul and then use the code FOUL. That's arenaclub.com/FOUL. Code FOUL for 20% off your first purchase. Get after it, FT fam.
And we are pleased now to be joined by the esteemed Bill Plunkett, Dodgers beat writer for the Orange County Register and author of the newest book, LA Story, where he
I'm sorry.
chronicles
I
the
was I was just reading a little, reading here.
Yeah, as I discussed in the intro, Bill is one of the best pure writers in the business. In addition to great beat writer, his leads are a thing of beauty. I for one cannot wait to read his book because just from a quality of writing perspective, I know it'll be top notch. Bill, first of all, it's great to see you again. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for the quality intro there. I get pumped up when I hear those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, well deserved. As I mentioned, Bill and I have worked alongside each other for over a decade now. We were at sister newspapers when he was with the Orange County Register. I was at the Riverside Press Enterprise, and we've covered hundreds of games together, coast to coast. Bought from Boston, New York, all the way to LA and San Diego. So it's been a great time all over the years with Bill. And when it comes to Dodgers knowledge, Bill's on top of it as much as anyone in the game. Bill, obviously the Dodgers won the World Series last year and followed it up with a very, very exciting offseason, adding Roki Sasaki, adding Blake Snell, bringing back Clayton Kershaw, Teoscar Hernandez, Blake Trinan, adding guys like Michael Conforto and Hae-Sung Kim, Kirby Yates, Tanner Scott, just continued to add on to what was already an extraordinarily talented team. How are the vibes right now? Again, spring training, you just got back, you're about to head out to Japan for the opening series. I would imagine the vibes in Dodgers camp are riding pretty high, to say the least.
Yeah, I think you got that pegged. It was interesting when the media was allowed to start, covering workouts. Most of the team had already been there for about 2 weeks. Part of that, I think, was the excitement of ready to get going and do it again. Part of it was the excitement of what a great offseason they had. Part of it, I think, for the veteran guys, the returning guys, was an awareness that things were going to start real early with this overseas trip, so they were prepared for that. But the readiness and the excitement for 2025 is really high.
Yeah, again, this is a very, very talented team. And I think obviously, there's a big rivalry between the Padres and Dodgers. But if you take a step back and just enjoy watching great players and great baseball, the Dodgers certainly are capable of all that and more. Bill, like any team, there are questions. As again, the Dodgers certainly face fewer questions than most other teams, but there are always things to watch over the course of the season. And as we look ahead to 2025, one of the main storylines for the Dodgers, one of the main things to watch is going to be Mookie Betts going back to shortstop. We saw the Dodgers move him over there midway through spring training last year. Really, it was closer to the end of spring training. He was a little rocky to start. Then he found his footing a little bit, was a little bit better. Then he went to another stretch where he made some errors. Then it looked like he was coming out of it when he was hit by a pitch that knocked him out for 2 months. By the time he came back, he was back out in the outfield. This year, he came in with a little more time, a little more heads up. He's going to be the Dodgers starting shortstop. This will now be his second go around playing every day at the position. What are the main things to watch for in terms of his play at shortstop to know, is he going to really stick there for a full 162, and ultimately what the likelihood of this turning into a successful endeavor are?
Yeah, I'll say this about you said the Dodgers have fewer questions. I don't think they have fewer questions. I think they just have more answers than most teams. The
That's a fair
depth
point.
is a big part of it. With Mookie, I thought he was a decent shortstop last year, even though he was kind of, thrown into the fire. He hadn't played shortstop on a regular basis since high school. And high school for him isn't as far back as it is for me, but it was quite a while ago. So his main problem last year was throwing. His footwork led to bad throws. The change in arm slot from an outfield throw to an infield throw was something that he struggled with. And I think if I remember the numbers right, 8 of his 9 errors were on throws.
Mm.
There was no issue about range or anything like that. He had to clean up the footwork and improve the throwing. 2 weeks after the World Series ended, he was at it. He was Dodger Stadium had some renovations done this offseason, so the players couldn't use it to work out like they normally would. So Mookie and Pedro Montero, one of the coaches, would go to various high school and junior college fields around Southern California and work out on a daily basis. He'd pop up in Pasadena, he'd pop up somewhere else. It was a daily thing, and Pedro just hit fungo after fungo, ground ball after ground ball. Chris Woodward, who's on the coaching staff now, terrific infield coach. He's the guy who kind of made Corey Seager a palatable shortstop, let's say. And he worked with Mookie. They studied the video of his throwing motion. So the thing that if you want to know how Mookie is going to become a shortstop, it's going to be through hard work. My question has always been why. They say that this fits the roster. I say he's the best right fielder in the game, or one of the best in his era. Why would you move him off of right field? Well, it allowed them to re-sign Tommy Edman, to re-sign Teoscar, to sign Michael Conforto. Uh, their argument is it fits the roster because they were able to make other moves. It's easier to find an outfielder who can contribute offensively than it is to find a shortstop who can contribute at the level that Mookie does.
Yeah.
But those of us around the team also know Mookie likes to be challenged, and
Yes.
he won't admit it, but right field became boring. He he had mastered right field, and
Yeah.
he needed a new challenge. I think by getting a challenged, more engaged Mookie, the Dodgers get a better Mookie. And he was my early pick for MVP. I think he's going to just have a terrific year. I think he's going to be more than adequate defensively, probably better than average, because he's so committed to it and he's such a great athlete. So I don't think it's going to be an issue. I do think he will spend the whole season there. I don't think they'll, send him back to the outfield this time like they did last year.
Yeah. Yeah, no question. Again, I was out there a lot last year covering the team. And one of the things that jumped out to me was, an hour before even other guys were getting to the clubhouse, Mookie was on the field taking ground balls with Chris Woodward, with Dino Ebel. Miguel Rojas was there sometimes, getting pointers from him. You saw the work ethic. I mean, when other guys weren't even dressed yet, he was out there working, taking hundreds of ground balls, practicing every kind of hop, every kind of angle, every kind of throw. And when you have that level of talent and athleticism combined with that work ethic, which, to be clear, not everyone in the majors has. You and I can both speak to that from
Nope.
experience. It's really, really remarkable. That's when special
This
things
is a
happen.
this is a guy. This is a
Go ahead.
guy who was at the superstar level as a right fielder, and
Yeah,
he moved and made himself vulnerable to criticism, to his reputation being tarnished, and did it because he thought it would help the team.
yeah,
And I think he enjoys that. He enjoys being challenged.
yeah. It certainly stands in contrast to the player the Red Sox choose to keep, Rafael Devers. Mookie certainly is one of a kind in a lot of ways. Bill, one of the other main things to watch for the Dodgers this year, we talk about all the players they added, but one of the biggest additions potentially is Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher. Ohtani had his second major elbow UCL surgery, didn't pitch last year. The Dodgers were tentatively targeting a May return timeline for him to the mound this year. Recently, they said they're going to slow play it a little bit because he also had shoulder surgery after injuring his shoulder, his left shoulder in the postseason last year, and they don't want to overload him. Want to make sure he's able to come back and hit and then pitch fine. They don't want to do too much at once while he's again recovering from another surgery. What is a realistic timeline for Shohei Ohtani to get back to the mound based on everything you're seeing and all your conversations with the Dodgers this spring training?
I think May was a realistic target. I just don't think they're in any hurry. I
Yeah,
don't think there's, I said this to Mark Pryor when I asked him about this the other day. I said, I'm not naturally suspicious, but I'm professionally suspicious. And when he went 9 days without throwing off a mound, and then all of a sudden they tell us that they're doing this pause and slow play, I get suspicious. We haven't had a chance to talk to Shohei. There are different media access rules for the great Ohtani, so we
yeah,
haven't had a chance to talk to him and ask him about it. I cannot tell you that anything happened or that anything came up to prompt this. Um, I think part of it is they have so many starting pitching options. There
yeah,
is no hurry. If it were another team, they'd be pushing Otani's rehab along because they need him to fill out the front of a 5-man rotation. The Dodgers have 6 or 7 guys. They don't, a couple of them, they don't know what they're going to do with. Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Bobby Miller.
yep,
All of these guys are available. So there's no rush to bring back Ohtani. And I think they want him in October. They want him to be at his best, at his full strength then. And they've done this with other players too. They tried to do it with Bueller last year, and he didn't come back very well, and it had to stop and start.
yep,
And they're doing it with Clayton Kershaw. He looks like he could be ready, early May, mid May, but I don't think we'll see him until later in the season either, just because there's no reason to rush.
yep,
And deep down, my read of the situation. Deep down, I don't think the Dodgers really care if he pitches again. I think they would happily take last year's DH Shohei Ohtani and the elite offense that he provides, and then go look for other starting pitchers. But he is a very good starting pitcher
yep,
when he's healthy. He
right,
loves it. He loves being the two-way unicorn. So I think they do it this way. It's as kind of a compromise, let's say.
Yeah, and again, we saw the Angels do it a little bit in that regard as well. You have to remember in 2019, he missed the whole season. 2020, he only made two starts for having a forearm strain. And going into 2021, there were real questions. Is he ever going to pitch again? Should he ever pitch again? And then he got bigger, stronger, refined his pitches. And from 2021 to 2023, he ranked in the top six in the majors in ERA, strikeouts per nine, opponent's batting average. So we've seen when he is healthy, he can pitch at a level of one of the top five or six starting pitchers in baseball. We also see that coming back from a second major elbow surgery again, whether it was full Tommy John or an internal brace procedure, neither he nor the Dodgers have confirmed. They've always been a little cagey about it. But we do see typically coming back from a second surgery, the success rate is a lot less than a first surgery. Do you how much more of a pitching career do you expect Otani to have, whether it's this year or next year, or do you think it realistically does become a thing where in a year or two the Dodgers say, you know what, even as a DH, you're the best player in the world. Let's just focus on that.
I wouldn't say a year or two. I think it'll be longer than that. But I do think at some point he either throttles back and doesn't, maybe becomes an occasional starter or an occasional reliever. I don't see him ever taking down 30 starts in a year again because he is just too valuable as a hitter and a leadoff man and all that he brings on the bases. Last year he stole 50 plus bases. He's not going to
Yep.
do that if he's pitching every sixth day. So there are things that you sacrifice by having him as a pitcher as well. And if everything goes right with the pitching staff, and that never happens, but if the Dodgers pitchers all stay healthy, they don't need him. They frankly don't need him. But if he is, like you say, one of the top five starting pitchers in baseball, boy, that'd be a nice thing to have in October for a team that has been down to three starters each of the last two postseasons. So, yeah, I don't think there's, I don't think Shohei is pitching in the major leagues on a regular basis 9 years from now.
Mhm.
But haven't we learned our lesson yet about Otani and doubting him and saying he can't do something? The,
Exactly.
the man's whole career has been
Yeah.
proving that he can do things no one else can.
Yeah. And again, that's why I will never doubt Shohei Ohtani. If you tell me that he comes back and does become a 20-game winner, it's like, sure, yeah, I'm going to suspend belief because that's what you have to do with him. Nonetheless, again, if he is able to come back, whether it's in June, July, August, or, especially if he's able to ramp up so he's in peak form in the postseason, that's certainly an incredible weapon to have. Bill, the Dodgers have talked about, well, they would have to go to a six-man rotation once Ohtani gets back. In the event that he doesn't come back till, let's call it June, July, will they still go to a six-man rotation? Because it makes sense when you consider Yoshinobu Yamamoto didn't actually pitch on regular rest at any point last year. They gave him an extra day of rest throughout the year. Roki Sasaki as well, coming over from Japan, is used to pitching once a week. We've seen injury issues for Tyler Glasnow before. You talk about some of those other pitchers coming back off of injury. Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Bobby Miller was not healthy for most of last year. He was trying to pitch through it. Will we see them go to a six-man rotation even without Ohtani in the rotation to start?
Absolutely. They're committed to, as you said, giving Yamamoto and Sasaki as close to the workload that they had in Japan as possible, and that means pitching once a week. Tyler Glasnow absolutely would benefit from pitching less often and having more recovery time. The schedule in April, kind of making up for the early start in the Japan trip, is really soft. They have a Sunday off, a Monday off, every Thursday off. So there's no need for six starters at any point in April. I think there's one stretch where they actually play 6 days in a row. So maybe somebody gets dropped in for a start there. May, things tighten up a little more. That's why I think Otani was always targeted for May, that he would drop in as the sixth starter when they were ready for that. Uh, Now, they could drop in Dustin May, send him to a rehab assignment in April, drop him in May. They could bring Kershaw back in May. So I think they're absolutely committed to a 6-man rotation. But the national media obsession with this thing really frustrates me, because if you follow the team, since Andrew Friedman got there,
Yeah.
they give their starting pitchers as much rest or more than any team in baseball. I have the
Yep.
numbers. I want to say 63% of the time in the last 10 years, the Dodgers starter has had at least 5 days rest
Yeah.
before each start. So they've been doing a 6-man rotation for 10 years. It's just that the sixth man has been an off day on the schedule, on the calendar. Somebody called up from the minors for a spot start, or 2 times through the rotation, maybe, or the occasional bullpen game. They certainly aren't afraid of that, as we found out in October. So
Yeah.
it's really nothing new to the way the Dodgers operate, uh, but it will be maybe more formalized in May, when the schedule starts picking up and they can't just use off days and occasional drop in spot starters. So, yes, 6-man rotation, absolutely.
You make a good point about them always giving their stars extra rest. Again, that's very, very common. We've seen them do it, especially last year with Yamamoto, Glass now, especially. They talked about it early. One of the things that has plagued the Dodgers, and you alluded to this earlier, is despite having, 7, 8, 9 deep, starting pitching options, despite giving guys extra rest, they have had a very, very, very hard time keeping their starting pitchers healthy. They have not had a single pitcher throw 150 innings each of the last 2 seasons. And you talked about by the time they get to the postseason, more often than not, they're down to 3 healthy starters. That was the case the last 2 years. You can go back to 2021. By the time that Braves series in the NLCS, they were down to 2.5 healthy starters. Remember the 2022 NLDS? Tony Gonsolin had just come off the IL, wasn't fresh. They started him in game 3. So even with everything that they have had a hard time keeping their starting pitchers healthy and in prime form in October. And some of that comes down to just the way they develop pitchers. They're very, very much about optimizing every single pitch. And what you get with that is really, really effective, shorter outings and also higher injury rates, because guys are maxing out all the time. Walker Buehler talked about that a lot. You look at this rotation now, and again, it's very, very, very deep. You talk once Ohtani comes back, Ohtani, Yamamoto, Sasaki, Snell, Glass, now down to May, Gonsolin, Miller, Kershaw. I mean, that's 9 deep, not to mention guys like Landon Knack, who were pretty darn good last year. What are the things that they are doing to try and keep guys healthier, if anything? Andrew Freeman alluded to this a little bit, maybe making some changes and how they treat guys, because it's, the extra rest hasn't really helped. They're consistently down to 3 starters. And last year they made it work with the bullpen games in October, but it's been a perennial issue for them. What, if anything, are they doing to change that? Or are they just going to keep doing what they've been doing, which is, hey, we're just going to trust the fact we can go 9, 10 deep and acquire some more guys at the deadline, and that'll be enough?
Yeah, they definitely don't want to have to go out at the deadline and try and get pitching like they have in the past couple of years. It's the most expensive time of the year to shop for pitching, as Andrew has pointed out many times. Yeah, there's a lot to untangle here. I asked, Andrew said at the end of last year that they were going to do, a deep dive into the pitching injury thing this offseason and adjust where they could adjust or where they needed to. So this spring, I asked him, how deep did you dive and what did you learn? And he wouldn't really say anything. He kind of basically he said there's no magic answer. It's not like we discovered something that nobody else in baseball has discovered. And let's be honest, pitching injuries is a pandemic across the sport. It's not
Very much
just the
so.
Dodgers. I think the Dodgers numbers become skewed for a couple of reasons. They are not afraid to take on pitchers with injury histories. They figure they can absorb it more than another team can. Tyler Glasnow, perfect example. They gave him the 5-year extension. How many other teams could afford to roll the dice at that financial level, like the Dodgers do, on a guy who's perennially injured. So they're not as afraid. I think their numbers, the injury numbers, go a little higher because they are also absolutely, with a quick finger, put a guy on the IL. Uh,
Yes.
they'll put a guy on the IL for 2 weeks just because they don't need him for 2 weeks and he can get a break. The All-Star break last year, they put Glasnow on the IL because he had a little twinge in his back. And it was like, okay, perfect. 2 weeks. That's a good way to keep down his innings. Now, the whole elbow thing came after that, and that didn't work out so well. But I think that increases their injury numbers a little bit. Those are all factors, but the overriding thing in baseball, I think, is the max effort all the time.
Yeah.
Guys are chasing not just velocity, guys are chasing spin rate. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. All these
Yeah.
metrics are what pitchers get measured by, how they get graded, and it's absolutely how they get rewarded. And if
Mhm.
guys are going to get rewarded for something, they're going to try and do that something. And that means chasing velocity, putting as much torque as you can on a pitch to get the spin rate as high as you can, all of those things. And I don't know how you fix it. I don't know how you tell a pitcher, listen, don't throw the hardest, the most effective pitch that you can. Throw a less effective pitch. We talked to Ohtani about this when it was a hot topic early last year, and that
Yeah.
was the thing that he came down to was you can't tell pitchers not to try as best as best they can on every pitch. I do think there's some thought that the pitch clock uh, bleeds into this as well. Guys are doing max effort with less recovery time between
Yeah.
pitches. I am a huge fan of the pitch clock. It gets me out of the park and filed before deadline a lot easier than it used to be.
Oh,
But it
yes.
does ask a lot of the pitchers. They max effort 99 miles an hour, and 15 seconds later they got to do it again. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't think the Dodgers know what the answer is, and they are as sophisticated and open to studying things as any team in baseball.
Yeah, again, there's a lot of layers to this, and it's something that every team's been searching for the answer for. But we'll see how the Dodgers withstand it once again if it occurs. You look at their starting rotation. Blake Snell, who no one would accuse of being a workhorse, is the only starter right now that has a 100 inning outing on his ledger, aside from Clayton Kershaw, of course. But in terms of their opening day rotation, the only pitcher with a 180 inning season on his resume. We'll see how the Dodgers' pitching depth holds up over the course of the year. And to follow up on that, Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin at one point were two of the best young pitchers in baseball. Let's not forget Tony Gonsolin started the All-Star game at Dodger Stadium 2 years ago. Both are coming off of injury. They don't have an obvious spot in the rotation. One of them could win the sixth spot, or they could both open up as the 5 and 6 starters, depending on the health situation on opening day of the rotation. But reasonably, what should be expected of these two? Because when they're both right, they're very, very, very dangerous weapons, both as starters and especially in Dustin May's case as a reliever.
Yeah, I resist that idea of moving Dustin May to the bullpen. There is
Agreed.
no consensus among baseball types that it's easier on a guy's arm to be a reliever. Maybe the longer outings of a starter are balanced off by the longer recovery time. As a reliever, you have to be ready to go again the next day or the day after that, and that brings with it its own challenges. That being said, I think Dustin May has as good stuff as anybody in the game when he's
Agreed.
healthy. He just can't
Agreed.
stay healthy.
Yeah.
So I would not be surprised if they find a way. He is coming off a couple surgeries. Maybe you put him on the IL, you send him on a rehab assignment, and let him kind of get his feet under him a little bit that way, and that clears the spot for Tony Gonsolin early in the year. they've both looked terrific in spring. Dustin's stuff seems to have recovered. Doesn't seem to have taken a step back after the surgeries. Gonsolin is his splitter looked terrific, and that's a big part of his success.
Yep.
So I think both of them, both of them would be in a rotation for 29 other teams.
Oh yeah,
But they'll
definitely.
probably end up sharing a rotation spot this year with the Dodgers.
Yeah. And Bobby Miller is another player that I think is important to touch on. Came up, had a really, really strong rookie season. Last year, just never got on track, dealt with some shoulder issues, and just was really not 100% at any point last year. Really, really struggled. Came back here in spring training and unfortunately took a comebacker, off his head. Very, very scary moment there. What is Bobby Miller's status, and where did the Dodgers see him fitting into their plans for 2025?
Yeah, I don't know where he fits in because of the numbers, but he's going to be behind schedule now because of, shutting it down with the concussion.
Yeah.
He just threw live batting practice the other day. I couldn't tell you what day of the week it is because it's spring training, but
Yeah, we've all been there.
over
No
the
worries.
weekend, he looked fine. He was hitting 98, 99 with velocity. I think he'll just be kind of stashed away in AAA. He could be one of those guys that gets the spot starts. Blake Snell this spring kind of took him under his wing, and they were inseparable on the field in a lot of ways. So that may help Bobby. He had the shoulder issue early last year. I don't think he was ever right. He
Yeah.
also had some knee problems, and was probably affecting everything. I think he came into camp a little better shape this year. I think maybe he's taking that stuff a little more seriously after the failure last year and the terrible season. These young guys. They've never failed before. So when a guy has a season like Bobby did last year, it's a very new experience to not just be able to blow 100-mile-an-hour fastball by hitters.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be interesting to see what maturing he does as a result of that. Too early to say at this point, but again, the Dodgers are so deep they can afford. They have the luxury of just kind of letting him go down and reset this year and spend most of the year in AAA.
Yeah, and again, we all know injuries happen, and if he's able to come up and be a big part of the rotation, obviously the more the better. But I think there's no question that when he's right, he can be a big, big weapon for them. And seeing how he's able to bounce back this year will be one of the more interesting underlying storylines to the Dodgers. Bill, the last main thing I want to touch on: Dave Roberts in line for a contract extension that will make him reportedly the highest paid manager in Major League history. And I think it's kind of amazing what difference a year makes. You go back at this point last year, there's conversation of, if they have another early season, early postseason bow out, or if there's another, mismatched bullpen situation, he could be on his way out. And one of the things that I thought was really, really important for the Dodgers last year in their postseason run, the big reason why they were finally successful is they stopped doing all the kind of self-sabotaging things they would do before in terms of they only used their starter, they didn't use relievers as starters unless they absolutely had to. They didn't do openers. They only used a bullpen game when they had no other option, which is the only time you should do it. They didn't use their starters as relievers until Walker Buehler came in the ninth inning at Yankee Stadium when they had no other option. None of this bring in Clayton Kershaw and Julio Urias in the seventh when you have your entire bullpen ready to go. They didn't do things like, hey, let's have our closer, let's pull our starter early and then try and get 2 innings out of our closer pitching on the second of back-to-back days. All the things that they did before that was just so dumb and avoidable, they stopped doing it. And they finally, again, played it as straight as they could, where, hey, our starters are starters. We're not using them in relief unless we have no other option. We're not doing bullpen games or openers unless we have no other option. And we're not going to ask too much of our relievers, well, pulling our starters the first chance we get in the games when they're pitching well. Now it seems like the entire narrative of Dave Roberts' managerial career has changed for the better, and I think deservedly so, because they finally, again, stop doing the self-sabotaging things they did in years past and saw success as a result. How would you say, everything has changed surrounding him and the vibes around him? Because again, at this point a year ago, it was a very real conversation that, this could be potentially his last year if this happens again.
I wouldn't even go back a full year.
Yeah.
I wrote about this the other day, and I referred to Game 4 NLDS against the Padres
Yeah.
as a sliding doors moment. If you know that concept of how things can drastically change in one moment.
Yeah.
They were down 2-1 in the series. They were on the verge of getting eliminated in the first round for the third straight year, and I think absolutely the torches and pitchforks would have been out coming for Dave Roberts' job.
Yeah.
They end up getting an 8-pitcher bullpen game shutout that game, another shutout in Game 5. They go on to win the World Series, and suddenly we're talking about Dave Roberts as a Hall of Fame manager.
Yeah.
It is amazing how much things changed. But every pitching decision Dave made, and let's be honest, Dave doesn't make them all by himself. It was the front office and him implementing the plan that they come up with. Every pitching decision they made all postseason was the right one. I don't know why that was, other than this year. I think they had better options in the bullpen than they had in previous years. They had more options than they had in previous years that led them to
Yeah.
make some of the bad moves of leaving Clayton Kershaw in against the Nationals in 2019 and asking Joe Kelly to go a second inning
Yeah.
when he hadn't done that all season. And what they were doing with Julio Urias in 2021, I still can't explain. That just
No
made no
one can. It
sense.
was a
Yeah,
nonsensical move, completely nonsensical that
and
made no sense
and
to
they
anyone.
ended up paying for it because they
Yeah.
had nothing left. They were on fumes by the time they
Yeah.
got to Atlanta for the NLCS.
Yep.
But Dave's, part of it is Dave is smarter than he was in those years. We all get better at our jobs, knock on wood, hopefully, and as you do it. So I think that was a big part of it. I think he had better options in the bullpen. Uh, it was kind of a front-loaded postseason for the Dodgers. I think the Padres were the best team that they played.
Yeah.
And Dave has said that. He said they looked at that first, in retrospect, that first round was their World Series.
Yeah.
After that, the Mets and the Yankees were not as big of a challenge. So all of that, you put it all together, they finally won a full season championship. So Dave's the hero,
Yeah.
and he danced with Ice Cube. I mean, what more can you say? He danced with Ice Cube.
He did. Yeah, no, again, and you're right. I go back to that game for the NLDS, and it's interesting. We talk about the Dodgers doing unnecessary things at times. Again, using stars as relievers when they didn't need to, throwing bullpen games when they didn't need to, asking too much. I go back to, game 2 of the 2017 World Series where Rich Hill's pitching great, but they pull him early knowing that they'd be asking Kenley Jansen to throw 2 innings, pitching for the second time in back-to-back days. Just, again, really nonsensical stuff, and they paid the price for it. They did everything right. They made the right decisions. They put their players in the best positions to succeed, and then those players executed, which is exactly what you need. So I thought it was both front office and player execution. But on the flip side, we talk about the Padres in that game 4 throwing Dylan Cease on short rest, something he was not used to. And again, Martin Perez, the Dodgers were strong against lefties that year, but Perez had pitched well. He was, for the Padres, was fully rested. Then the Padres could go in choosing one of Cease or Darvish on full rest for game 5. Just throwing a guy on short rest when you have a fully rested option is, again, the type of thing the Dodgers would sometimes do when they didn't need to. We saw Clayton Kershaw go on short rest a lot, and it never worked. So I think, again, it was also the
It
Dodgers were able
never
to take
works
advantage.
with anyone. I mean, let's
Correct.
be honest. In the modern era, Madison Bumgarner in 2014 or whatever year that was, that's the
Massive
last
exception.
one.
Yeah.
I don't think anytime you see a team ask a starter to go on 3 days rest, it's a bad idea because guys just
Correct.
don't do it. They're not familiar with it. They need the recovery time more than they might have years ago.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's just a bad strategy.
And when I covered the 2021 World Series between the Braves and Astros, I wrote about this, and at that time I ran the numbers, and the average ERA for pitchers on 3 days rest was 5.5. And keep in mind, the guys going on 3 days rest are normally aces, ones and two types. So it
Right,
just doesn't
right.
work. And I thought the Dodgers really, really took advantage of a bad decision by the Padres. And then Game 5 rolls around, and look, the Dodgers. I mean, give the Dodgers pitchers credit; they just pitched great. And I think a lot of focus from the Padres side is 24 innings without scoring. We choked it away. And look, anytime you're up 2 games to 1 at home, it certainly hurts because you feel like you had a chance to win. But to me, it was more about just give the Dodgers pitching credit to a man. Every single one of them was dominant. Go back to Yamamoto in Game 5, even. The Padres had owned Yamamoto that year through that point. 9 runs off of him in 13 innings across 3 starts, including the postseason. He went out, pitched great in Game 5. The bullpen took it from there. I really thought it was more about the Dodgers. They just pitched great, and 2 great teams went at it. Someone was going to have to lose, and as you mentioned, Dave Roberts has gone on the record. With media. I was at an event at USC he was speaking at, and he said it there to a whole auditorium full of thousands of sports professionals that, hey, we felt like that was our World Series, and again, the Dodgers came out on top. I do think I'll be interested to see this coming year just kind of how they maneuver it again, if they learn the right lessons from it, which is, hey, let's keep our starters as starters. Let's, only throw bullpen games when we have to. And let's not try and get 2 innings out of our closers in the second of back-to-back days. I hope that's the lesson they take from it, and not the, oh, hey, we were able to use, a bunch of bullpen games with success in the postseason. Let's do more of them, because you always want to make sure teams take the right lessons from the postseason.
Well, they certainly have beefed up the bullpen. So the
Yes,
lesson they took from last year was it really helps to have a good bullpen and to
it
have
does.
4 guys who have 20 save seasons in their past.
Yeah.
They just, the lesson they took from last year was, let's go get more starters, more bullpen, more of this, more. It's the more era in LA.
Yeah, no question. And again, I've said this before. I will never criticize a team for trying to put the best team on the field, and that's what the Dodgers have done. And should be a fun season. Dodgers and Padres will have a lot more fun matchups this year. There's no love lost between the teams on or off the field, and we'll see if there's more fuel to the fire added. Bill, thank you so much for joining me today and lending your insight and expertise. We appreciate it. Go ahead and give your book one more plug. I want to make sure everyone gets a copy.
Oh, I happen to have one right here. Pre-order on Amazon. Publication date April 1st. So get yours now.
Awesome. We'll go ahead and do that. Bill, thank you so much and have a safe trip to Japan.
You got it, Kyle.
Once again, that was Bill Plunkett, Dodgers beat writer for the Orange County Register and Southern California News Group. Lots of great information there about the Dodgers, what to watch for this year from Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Roki Sasaki, and the rest of their team. Again, the Dodgers loaded up this offseason. They're always a top contender for the World Series. They figure to be once again this year. We'll see what their matchups with the Padres hold. This has been another episode of Friar Territory here on the Foul Territory Network. Go ahead and give us a review on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube, whatever platform you're watching and listening on. We'd love to hear from you. Got a lot more great stuff. We're going to continue our NL West Division previews. Nick Pecor of the Arizona Republic will be joining us to break down the Diamondbacks. We'll also have previews of the Rockies and Giants. We're going to have a full preview of the Padres spring breakout game coming up this Friday against the A's. Mike Cameron will be joining us. Heath Bell will be joining us. It's a great time to subscribe. We've got a lot of good stuff coming up. And go ahead and give us a review, a like, anything and everything. We'd love to hear from you. Once again, for Bill Plunkett, I'm Kyle Glazer. Thanks for watching and listening. Have a good one, everybody.